I thought to myself, there's a bigger story here that connects to really all the features of a police state. Because, I mean, I'm a creature of the 1980s, the Cold War. There are police states, of course, now, like North Korea, China, Iran, and of course the old Soviet Union. So then I said, well, what do those police states have in common? Well, they have mass surveillance of citizens. They have systematic censorship. They have this mind-numbing indoctrination and propaganda in the schools and in the media. They tend to be one-party states, which is to say, not that they have no elections, but the elections are sort of controlled so that if there is an opposition, it's subordinate to the regime. They criminalize dissent. They go after religious liberty. They have political prisoners. And I go, whoa. All these elements to one degree or another, I see here in America.
Were you intentionally trying to bring that to my first question about Israel and Hamas? Because that's what you basically explained right there. We have one side that's saying we have some rules, and you might not like the rules that they're playing by, but they're saying we have some rules that have been born out of Western ideology. And we have another side saying we're going to try to kill as many of you and as many of us as possible, actually, at the same time. That's a real problem.
I mean, with the Hamas thing is so creepy because the reveling in the massacre of women and civilians, you know, there's been a trope in America for 30 years about sort of, I think the philosopher Leo Strauss called it the reductio ad Hitlerum. Everything is linked to the Nazis, right? And normally the problem with that is that the Nazis are so much worse that the analogy to Nazism always seems like a little stretch. But think about it, the Nazis were very careful to have their death camps, not the concentration camps, which were labor camps, but the death camps outside of Germany. They were in the occupied territories, they were in Poland, and that's because the Nazis had to hide those crimes because they couldn't say, we're gassing the Jews and we're proud of it. They couldn't do that. But the Hamas does that. Hamas basically goes, we're killing kids, and look, here we are. And there's a certain kind of triumphalism about that I think is so morally unnerving that when I see people defending it or defending the cause that motivates it, it's very discombobulating.
So when you see the sort of chaos that we're seeing right now, these rallies, the protests, you know, we're only 2-3 years out of COVID, summer of love, and all of the chaos related to that. We need law enforcement to do some things, and yet you're making a movie about the ever-encroaching movement, or ever-encroaching growth, I suppose, of the security state.
Well, I mean, we need law enforcement to do the things that it was empowered to do. I mean, this is a little bit like sometimes when I talk police state, I'll have these Republicans. This is like a classic Republican congressman response. Well, Dinesh, we're supposed to be back the blue. Now you're saying the police state. And I'm like, of course, there's no contradiction between backing the blue and backing the cops doing what cops are supposed to do. And similarly insisting that the FBI go after the mafia and go after organized crime and do the things that the FBI was set up to do. But, you know, I have to explain in this movie what is going to cause an FBI agent, by and large a good guy, and in fact sometimes a right-of-center guy, to kick into an apartment at 6 in the morning, go find some 70-year-old grandmother, like wrestle her to the ground, you know, twist her arms behind her back and put handcuffs, pull her down the stairs if she won't go willingly, pull her into the street where neighbors come and they gawk at her. I mean, how do you get a good guy to do a bad thing? I think that is key to understanding the psychology of a police state.
And that's what people used to ask about the Nazis, actually.
The same question.
Not to do that reductum, but I mean, that was the same question. These weren't all bad people 5 years before.
Yeah, and I specifically mention, Hannah Arendt and her idea about Eichmann from the book Eichmann in Jerusalem, that Eichmann was, he was a Nazi, but that wasn't what motivated him. He was sort of like, I want to be part of a really efficient system. I'm an up-and-comer. I want to be recognized for my own creative efforts. And so I'll ally with this cause, and I'll become a sort of master builder of this cause. And so this was Arendt's famous phrase, the banality of evil, because this guy was not all about, let's rid Europe of the Jews. He was ultimately an opportunist and a social climber. And I think that is an important insight. There are evil people, and then you have evil people who set up bureaucratic mechanisms to get good people and just ordinary people who want to get ahead in life to do those bad things.
Was the genesis of this movie January 6th? Or I'm guessing you've obviously been kicking these ideas around for quite some time, but was that really the thing that got you to make it?
I started out thinking
or at least the reaction, let's say, to January 6th.
Well, I started out thinking that there is an untold story about January 6th, and I think we actually have it in the movie. By that I mean, I always like to not just recycle what other people are saying, but break new ground in understanding an event, and we can talk about that if you like. But I started out saying, I've got an insight about January 6th, let's do a movie on that. Then I realized there are 4 or 5 other guys making a January 6th movie. And so I pulled back and I thought to myself, there's a bigger story here that connects to really all the features of a police state. Because, I mean, I'm a creature of the 1980s, the Cold War. There are police states, of course, now like North Korea, China, Iran, and of course the old Soviet Union. So then I said, well, what do those police states have in common? Well, they have mass surveillance of citizens. They have systematic censorship. They have this mind-numbing indoctrination and propaganda in the schools and in the media. They tend to be one-party states, which is to say, not that they have no elections, but the elections are sort of controlled so that if there is an opposition, it's subordinate to the regime. They criminalize dissent. They go after religious liberty. They have political prisoners. And I go, whoa. All these elements to one degree or another, I see here in America. And it's a shock for me because I'm an immigrant. I mean, you know, I've written books like What's So Great About America.
Yeah, of course.
I've been very much of an American exceptionalist, a rah-rah American triumphalist.
Yeah.
And yet that America is not the America we're living in now. So this movie to that degree has a personal dimension. It's like, what happened to those liberties in the Bill of Rights that were supposed to be unalienable, above political negotiation, not subject to majoritarian overthrow? Suddenly all those rights are in jeopardy.
Do you think our institutions have enough of a sort of self-correcting system within them to fix some of this? I mean, it seems to me right now, if we didn't have a Supreme Court that leans the way it does, we would be seriously, seriously screwed. And as we're taping this right now, the Republicans can't even figure out a Speaker of the House. Like, it could end up being a Democrat. That's how insane, with the Republican majority, it could end up a Democrat House, you know, in essence, controlled House.
It is absolutely nuts. Now, look, we're not a full-fledged police state. Obviously, if we were, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and I wouldn't be making this movie.
Yeah.
So when the jaws of the police state snap shut, I have Yeonmi Park, who's a North Korean refugee.
She's a friend of mine now.
And, you know, Yeonmi goes, listen, when the jaws of the police state are shut, there's no time that remains, and all you can do is run.
Yeah.
You know, get out, get your family out, get your money out, but we're not there. Now, I think the reason our institutions have proven so vulnerable is one, because there have been these sort of fear-inducing events. Let's start with 9/11, but then let's add COVID. Let's even add January 6th, because if you think about it, all of those were pretexts for massive expansions of state power and encroachments on liberty that would not otherwise have occurred. You can't tell Americans you can't go to church, you can't go to synagogue, unless it's a virus, so you can't do it for that reason. And similarly, I think the idea that you can't talk about 8 subjects on social media, it was after January 6th that became okay to say, and YouTube is like proudly listing all the things you can't talk about.
Right.
So I think that
you could deny elections, let's say, for 4 years before that under Trump. The second it went the other way, then
it was restricted, exactly. The other thing I want to say is that I think a lot of Americans are fooled because our police state doesn't come in the usual kind of cartoon colors. By that I mean Americans think, well, if it's where's the revolutionary overthrow of the government that, say, Lenin did? Where's the Stalin overcoat? Where's the Hitler mustache? Our police state is very cunning, and it marches behind the banner of law, saving democracy, upholding truth by prohibiting misinformation, and even affirming liberty. So it's a disguised police state, and it uses a lot of camouflage.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.